Hello, everyone. I'm Pat Martinez, the host of Conversations in the Round. We have an exciting organic conversation coming up called Ni de aquí, ni de allá, neither from here nor from there. So we capture the conversations of organic conversations of four Puerto Ricans that are joining me here today from across the country. Introduce yourself and tell me why you're here.
Good day, familia. Pat, it's always an honor to work with you and truly a pleasure to be part of this conversation with the rest of our esteemed panel. I'm Rafael Recollazo. By day, I'm the National Political Director for Unidos US, the nation's largest Latino civil rights organization. I also run our PAC. I believe I'm the only Puerto Rican that runs a national Latino super PAC in
Mhm.
this country. And then by night, I'm the host of the Collazo Show, which you can find on YouTube and Substack and everywhere you download a podcast. So we have these kind of conversations at the intersection of leadership, politics, y cultura. So I feel very comfortable here. And again, a pleasure to be with you, Pat, as always.
Thank you very much for being with us here today. And next we have Elizabeth Rivera, who I know for many years. Elizabeth, tell us where you hail from.
Well, it's an honor to be joining this panel as well. And it's my first time doing this. So I am very excited to join all of you and just share this opportunity of this conversation. I am located right now in Miami, but I have been throughout my life in different parts of the world since my dad was in the army. So I really relate to ni de aquí ni de allá in many ways. So just thank you for having me. And it's great to be in the opportunity of this conversation.
Thank you for being here. Elizabeth and I know each other for many years, and I just go to her house when I need to get out of North Carolina, go down to Florida. Now I have two more friends to visit. And Heidi, I'm going to check it over to you. It would punt it over, not check it over. We're not
Yeah.
playing hockey, but now we're in Florida, so I'm going to pickleball it to you.
Oh,
Heidi, why don't you introduce yourself and your position at Ola?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Pat, for including me in this conversation. I'm happy to be here. My name is Heidi Monica Romer, and I'm the CEO and founder of Hola Books, an online literary platform centering Latino and Caribbean authors. And I live in South Florida, Dania Beach specifically. And I was raised in between the Bronx and Miami my whole life. So coming back to South Florida was always the plan. Thank you again for being here, and happy to be here with all of you today.
New York Rican, huh?
Yeah, typical too. Yeah.
And last but not least is Sammy. I met the other day. She is the author. She'll talk about the company, but also she authored a book called Becoming La Jefa. And
Whoop,
she
whoop.
said to me during a conversation that I was the original Jefa. I said, okay, here we go. But her book is now available through Hola Books. But Sammy, why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, and where are you located from? Where are you coming from
I'm
in Florida?
Hi everyone. I'm Sami Heyman Marrero. I'm based out of Orlando, Florida, and I've been living here for 22 years. I can't even believe it. It's been that long.
Wow.
And I'm the founder and CEO of Urbander, and it's a communications firm that specializes in multimedia, productions, and storytelling. And also, most recently, thanks to this partnership with Hola Books of Verde Luz Ventures, where we're going to support creators and authors and storytellers in amplifying their voices. And so I'm so excited to be here. This is a topic that really speaks to my heart as a Boricua, and ready to get going with whatever it is, that you propose we talk about.
So, everyone, sit tight. Let's go. And just kick off the conversation. I love that. Just, it's an organic conversation, but it is a conversation. I would ask our speakers to take turns. If you want to speak out of turn, it's okay. We get excited. It's just lively. But the first question, ni de aquí, ni de allá. Do you remember the first time you felt ni de aquí, ni de allá? And at what age did you first hear it? Elizabeth, let's kick it off with you because I see you front and center here. And then we'll go to
sure.
Rafa, Heidi, and Sammy.
Sure. For me, it was when I was about 14 years old. And that's when my dad decided that he was going to retire from the service. And I always lived in military bases. So I considered myself to be, well, being born here in the United States, but having the culture of my parents and of being born in Puerto Rico. So that was always very ingrained. But for me, being 14 and returning to a small town where they were born and where they were taking us back was very culturally shocking because then I was the Americana, okay? And then I'm here like, but I've always been Puerto Rican, so why are you calling me La Americana, you know? And it's because I knew how to speak good English. I remember that the ninth grade teacher would give me the tests from the high school kids from her English class, which was almost like a second grade English. And for me to correct, for me, all the phonetics and all the information that she was teaching, and I'm here like, really? So I had to adjust myself into the new environment of being classified as the Americana. So that was part of my cultural shock from being in the American schools, Army schools, into a public small town school.
Wow. What year are we talking about, if I may ask?
You're going to put me in math?
No. Okay, let it go. We're going to bypass that thing. We're going to say, let it go. Because at one point, when you went back to Puerto Rico, and Rafael, if you can elaborate a little bit more on that too, when you finish the question I'm going to ask you, because I know at one point, um, English was the only thing that Puerto Ricans could speak on the island, and then our parents would say to us, we want you to assimilate. Am I wrong or am I right? Or it wasn't my household only.
No.
Well,
And the
in my
question goes
house,
to you, Heidi, what was it?
That was my household, right? I'm not fluent in Spanish, and it was for that reason. My mother was like, "No, I want you to speak good English."
The
So,
good English.
well, we would speak Spanish in the house, but English was always primarily there because of the schools. Now, with my children, I worked so that they could go and learn both languages fluently. I made a purpose for them to learn both languages fluently.
Rafael, jump in. You could just, when was the first time you heard ni de aquí ni de allá? Or did you ever hear it?
I I hadn't thought about this in a while, but it's an interesting story. So I think I was 15, 16 maybe, and I was visiting my family in Dorado. I remember I was playing basketball with my cousins, and my mom's from a huge Puerto Rican family in Orocovis, 11 siblings, and tons of cousins on the island. And something happened, and I said something in my lousy Spanish at the time. And my cousin says something in Spanish to his buddies, leave him alone, es un gringo. And cut him a break. And I was really mad, but also kind of like confused because I was mad because my cousin called me a gringo. And I was also confused because my cousin, my aunt, married his dad, my uncle, in the States. And he wasn't just white, but he was like a Minnesota blonde hair, blue eyed white person. So my cousin was blonde hair and blue eyed. So here's this white boy who was raised on the island telling his brown skinned Puerto Rican buddies that I was the gringo. So it's sort of like was very interesting. You talk about turning the tables. So that was a moment. And I think on some level I've always kind of been chasing it, wanting to feel more Puerto Rican, having been born and raised in the States and in the cradle of liberty, Philadelphia. You can't get any more patriotic than that, right? Is where it started here. But always feeling like I was kind of behind and wanting to catch up and prove that I could kind of be as Puerto Rican as some of my cousins that were born and raised on the island. So I think on some level, on some of that journey. So that was kind of an ironic twist to the story, but that it still sticks with me to this day. And my cousin, by the way, Still calls me a gringo when I go to Puerto Rico. And he's still blonde and blue-eyed, everything else.
His color doesn't change.
No, no, no. Minnesota, Puerto Ricans, they're so beautiful. They're tall, they're olive colored, they're super nice. They're so annoying. I don't
It's
know you
very
guys have.
cold in Minnesota. That's why.
Yeah, well, that's why most of them live on the island, So
That's
a few
right.
in Texas, but yeah.
So they're the Minnesota nice.
Yeah, oh, very, very true,
So
very true.
when I was growing up, I'm with Heidi. I remember my mother saying to me, speak English. You have to learn the good English. So here I am with New Yorkese. So we Puerto Ricans come in all shapes and sizes, all colors. If we put together, in my family alone, we come in all spectrums. I have Hawaiian Puerto Ricans all the way to the Minnesota, blonde hair, blue eyes, and then one that was albino that somebody said el lechero. And we spoke, you said good English. We used to speak Spanglish, half English, half Spanish, but we understood each other. We spoke fast. So Heidi in New York, I understand where you're coming from as far as not speaking Spanish, because I only come to use my Spanish more in Charlotte than I did up north in New York. Sammy, what do you think? When was the first time you heard ni de aquí ni de allá?
I was about 8 years old when my parents moved us from the Bronx to Puerto Rico, and I didn't speak Spanish fluently either. The only experience that I had was talking to my grandmother, que le hablábamos, right? We used to speak to her in English, and she would respond in Spanish, so I understood it. But to be honest, as a kid who was what, 8 years old, I barely spoke English too, right? I was just learning language, period. So I was caught in between that when I first landed in Puerto Rico and my parents moved us to un monte up in the rural area. And like Rafael and Elizabeth, I was called La Gringa at first. And that label stayed with me until something happened, right? And it happened because the community started to embrace me and my siblings. Era chiquita todavía, right? Like my teachers put me in kindergarten for 1 hour a day, even though I was in third grade for everything else, so I could learn the Spanish. Mi mamá me ama, mi mamá me mima, all of that. And then within 3 months I found my footing with the language, but it wasn't the language that made them embrace me. It's just the culture itself. I learned how to climb the trees like everybody else. I ran barefoot through the coffee plantations. I learned how to use a machete, for example, right? And so then at some point in my childhood, I stopped feeling like an outsider. They stopped calling me those names, and I became de aquí, de Puerto Rico. And I don't know, it's because of the age that I was much younger, that it wasn't, your teens, right? It's just a lot more difficult, and there's the bullying and the teasing and all of that. So I feel now, listening to Rafael and Elizabeth, right, somewhat fortunate to have moved to Puerto Rico when I was much younger, because that whole, de aquí de allá, dissipated. That feeling doesn't exist. I feel que soy de allá. I feel que soy de allá.
Can I,
So,
if you don't mind if I could say,
Raphael, before
yeah.
you jump in, I want you to
Hmm.
also follow up in that whole feeling, always catching up, because it
Mhm.
living in between two cultures, you always feel like you feel like you're under pressure. And I want you to elaborate on that, but I know you wanted to jump in and say something to Sammy's response. So I'll let you do that, but also follow up with that whole, because that intrigues me and I wanted to share it
Sure.
with everybody.
No, that Sammy just hit on something. I don't think realize, Sammy, how profound what you just said is.
Hmm.
Because, and I think we see it all the time. David Bignot coverage of Hurricane Maria, all the non-Puerto Ricans going to the island, particularly around the Bad Bunny residency. And what non-Puerto Ricans, yeah, of course, the language, the culture, the flavor. But when you consistently hear from non-Puerto Ricans, whether they're Latino or not, whether they're my Lutheran Minnesota cousins or not, is that, coño, we all would love to be Puerto Rican because we all want to be Puerto Rican. Yeah, of course, the flavor, the culture. But these people are so warm and so,
Mhm.
embracing us. And I've always said that I think we almost kind of, because our we've taken our culture is so globally accepted because of our talents that we focus so much on that with our as who we are. But the corazon, when you really boil it down, is what you said, Sam. Is that that embrace of who we are as humanity. And I don't want to get too deep about it, but that's you can't. If it was just about the show, people wouldn't treat us this way. I remember there was a Mexican American woman who grew up in Chicago. It was a few years back, and she put on Facebook, look, I'm Chicago Mexican. I grew up with a lot of Puerto Ricans. I didn't get to Puerto Rico until I was 30-something years old. Now I know why Puerto Ricans love being Puerto Rican so much. Because these are the warmest, most wonderful people I've ever been around, and how they treated me and accepted me. So I just wanted to honor what you said, Sammy, because I don't think you realize, we could sum up this whole conversation with that. But getting back to Pat, what you asked, I think it was probably about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when I made peace with the fact that on some level, we have to be who we are. And as much as I've chased being a real Puerto Rican, I can't, I just have to accept the fact that my flavor, my version of being Puerto Rican, I have to honor that because I wasn't raised on the island. I haven't even spent really relatively that much time on the island. A couple week vacation every other year kind of thing. But what I do every day is to try to represent our people as best I can with my skill set and my background. So I think we just have to, the more we accept who we are and not try to overcome it. I did with it too when I was growing up. I grew up in North Philly. I grew up, and it's another story for another time, but I have a brother that's in hip hop, and the guys that are in the Roots band that are on Jimmy Fallon would come to my mom's house and rice and beans, and he used to hang out with people like Jill Scott and Eve and all these incredible hip hop R&B artists growing up that he were in high school jumped with. And you want to be cool, and so you overdo it, right? You want to be a street guy, and that's not who I am either on some level. So being comfortable in our own skin and what we bring to the Puerto Rican community, I think is really important. We have to honor it no matter what.
Yeah.
Well, honoring is one thing. I want to go to you, Heidi. You mentioned something very profound that I don't even think you realize you said. I grew up in the Bronx and I always had to fit in. So I thought, okay, New York City is very diverse. I grew up in the South Bronx, 148th Street between Brook Avenue and St. Anne's. I met somebody at United Latinas that was from the Bronx, the lady that was on the panel. And I said, hey, Bronx. And she knew exactly. We just started talking because there's a communication between each other.
That had to be
What
Millie.
That was Millie.
That
And
had to be
what
Millie.
we talked about, what you said was so important that you don't speak Spanish. Did you feel pressure at any point that you had to at least understand the language? Were you embarrassed or shamed by other Puerto Ricans saying, mira, esa no habla español, ¿qué le pasa a esa? At least you understand some of the lingo that they're saying, but did you feel the pressure? Because that's something that we really should be easy and forgive each other, give each other grace. So you don't know the language. So what? You're still Puerto Rican.
Yeah, when I was listening to everybody talk, so my experience is very different. That big family or family and welcoming. I don't know what that is, right? And I'm Puerto Rican and German. So both of my parents were born on the US, like, in the US mainland, and I've shared that before. And so I remember being very young and not feeling welcomed on either side. But I think I was like a little, or I thought I was like tough, right? Because like I remember like not caring. Like I remember like, so what? You this, like I remember, so that's one thing. And then as far as being in the Bronx, definitely didn't fit in. Definitely didn't fit in. Um, but I didn't care either. Like, like I don't remember having beef with anybody. I got along with everybody. Like where I grew up, it was predominantly Puerto Rican, but it was like Dominican, Jamaican, Haitian. Like it was, I just, I don't remember feeling pressure. Do I remember people like switching to Spanish so I wouldn't understood? You know what, Sammy? Maybe that's why I understand it so good because I was like, oh, I know, I'm gonna figure out what you're saying, But
Mhm.
um, I wouldn't say pressure. I don't know. I think for me it was like, oh no, no, you're not. I think I was more, you're not gonna see me sweat. You're not gonna beat me. You're not gonna, that's not gonna be the thing to stress
Well,
me out.
where do you think you got that from? Because that's something that we all have.
Yeah.
And I think I'm talking for everybody on this panel. When you talk about the conversations that you had, that innate feeling of, you know what, I'm going to move forward with or without you. You don't
Yeah.
like me, I'm moving forward. I don't care if you
Yeah.
like me, because I had that feeling many times. You
Wow.
just move
Yeah.
forward. So
Yeah.
where do you think that comes from? Your mom, or did you see your dad do it? Because that's a nice combo, Puerto Rican German. Elizabeth,
Thank you.
I didn't forget you and your military background. So,
I think, I don't know. I'm gonna say both. Like my mother had a mouth, right? My father had a temper. I mean, like I don't know, and I think it's a combination of both. And honestly, growing up between the Bronx and Miami, like talk about two
mhm.
culturally rich and dynamic environments, I loved it. I loved it. So I don't know. That's something I have to think about. But yeah.
I
And
think that
while
we,
you think
I'm
about that, I
sorry.
know Sammy was wanting to chip in because she's a very tough cookie. And then Elizabeth, you can chime in.
I think that it's just part of who we are. It's part of our DNA. We've always been here. When I first did my ancestry, DNA thing many years ago, I wept when I saw one puntito on the island of Puerto Rico. Porque
Hmm.
yo dije, sí, carajo, we've always been here. ¿Tú me entiendes? And then to me, I always cling on to the words of the poet Juan Antonio Corretjer, which is where I
Mm,
grew up, from Frontón, Ciales, where I grew up. And he said que yo sería borincano aunque naciera en la luna.
Hmm.
And so then I think that's deeply rooted in who
mm,
we are because we're displaced, right? First, the big displacement was to New York, but we have a big population in Philly, right, Rafael? A big population in Dallas, pero estamos regados
Chicago.
everywhere, all over the
Yeah.
world. La diáspora puertorriqueña is a real thing, but we're rooted, right? In our heart is here in the Americas. Our heart is there en la isla. Our heart,
mm,
so somos borincanos, aunque naciéramos en la luna. Even if we were born on the moon, we have that ingrained in us
mm,
that we come from this small but powerful island and this powerful culture that's exceptional. Look at these two
mm.
guys. They just won the
I
Derby, the
know the
Ortiz
Ortiz
brothers,
brothers.
right?
Yes.
I
Lo
mean,
I
I'm
was
like,
chiquito,
not
you
lo
going to
can't,
chiquito.
mention until
you
the end because I
can't,
know everybody's going to get
you
excited.
can't make this up. You can't make this up. How such a small island
Yep.
can have so much talent, so
So
much
before we go
power.
into the positive,
Yeah.
I want
So,
most of our family has been in the military. Elizabeth, you mentioned that you were military brat. Is that right to say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have cousins that, because of the military, ended up in Hawaii. Hawaii, that we heard the song, and you mentioned Bad Bunny, Rafael. I have to, that brought back my memories of my cousin. They were in Maui. So we have Puerto Ricans that are as dark as black can be with the curly hair, very Polynesian. And then I have the Minnesota, the light skin, blonde, blue eyes, everybody there. Elizabeth, you grew up in the military. Your dad was in the military?
Yes,
What
for more
branch was
than
he in?
he was an infantry. So
Infantry. So
so
when
he
did
went
what does that, I'm sorry, the question that I want to pose to you, how does that transform your idea of feeling the pressure of, then you were here, then you were there, you moved around a lot. And because of the
with
military, he was a great man. I was fortunate enough to meet her parents, um, and her dad before he passed. So he was a very welcoming person, Rafael. You would have loved to go to her house. And my mother always taught me comida y música, food and music brings people together. So when I met your dad, Elizabeth, I was very taken with his warm and hospitable way that he was. But tell me a little bit about, how did you feel in the different areas that you grew up in? Did you always feel in between, even when you went to Puerto Rico? Or are you as strong as Sammy that, no, I'm Boricua, Borinqueña,
no,
hasta que la luna? What was
I,
it? What was the saying?
I soy borincana aunque haya nacido en la luna.
Seguro que sí. Dime.
Well, it's interesting because they were always very grounded in letting us know that we are Puerto Ricans, both of my parents. To me, they're heroes because my mother didn't know very much English,
Hmm.
but she managed to pull it all together with my father, and they were married 64 years. So, in that sense, when understanding Rafael's understanding the welcoming that spirit that brings us to the island, and the rooting that Sammy has mentioned, even though we could be anywhere. But my parents taught me that no matter where we were at, we were from Puerto Rico. We had school on the 5th of January, but our Three Kings Day boxes were underneath the bed, and we would go to school, but we would opening our presents and moving around. It was resiliency, the resiliency of knowing who we were, even though we were in X, Y, and Z place, no matter what, we were resilient. We would move, we would bring together who we were with the people around us in Panama, in Germany, wherever we were. We
And the
would
music would follow, and the food would always be the same. I remember going to your parents' house, and they offered us to eat, and it was Puerto Rican food, and we were in Puerto Rico, but also there was an element of knowing that, oh, I was asked first, would you prefer this? No, I'll eat Puerto Rican food. I'm in Puerto Rico. But your parents were very diverse in the way that they spoke and everything. And your mom, I love her to pieces, and your sisters and everything. But one thing that brings us all together is the food and the holidays. You mentioned the January 6th. How do you all feel about January 6th? Rafael, how do you feel about January 6th? We heard Elizabeth say that that was my children till this day when they say, ¿y la cajita? ¿Por qué no va a poner la cajita debajo de la cama? They're 30 and 33. They stopped asking me last year because I said, I'm not doing this anymore. You're in Chicago. You're not coming for Christmas. What am I going to send you a cajita? But it's the grass. My mother used to make believe that the camels came into our house. She used to put, she goes, give me something so I can make believe that their feet were here. So I have to cut out camel hoofs como un idiota. And then I put them down for the kids. The same for Easter. She said, how are they going to believe the Easter Bunny? Easter Bunny? Yeah, we don't do Easter Bunny. We do La Cajita in January 6th. And the night before, I'd have to go out and rip my grass because we had to put it in there so it was always holes in the same place because I would rip it from the longest and have my husband, don't cut that grass because that's for January 6th. He goes, there is no grass. It's January 6th. I said, I know, but there ain't going to be grass there tomorrow either. So Rafa, tell me a little bit. I'm sorry, I called you Rafa.
No,
Rafael is
that's
okay?
fine. That's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. Look, I mean, when I think about Three Kings, I think about my mom. And
Mm.
there was nobody more Puerto Rican than mommy. That was a big part of her carrying on our family traditions. And I don't know where growing up in North Philly when it was middle of the winter where she found grass, but she always found like real grass to put in our cajitas. And it was just a real warm memory for me. And just we lost our mom in the physical form a couple years ago, but she's always in my heart. And there was just nobody, not only from Morocovis, which is like that's like real campo Puerto
Yes.
Rico. Like her thing was like she was almost like a Puerto Rican snob because her thing was like there's Puerto Ricans and there's real Puerto Ricans like us in the campo because we're the most Puerto Rican and then of all the Jibaros, we're the corazón de la isla. So of all of us, she used to refer to Morovis, those other people like suburbs of Morocovis. That's how Puerto Rican she was. But no, that's our foundation. Those kind of memories, those kind of cultural moments for sure.
Yes.
I'm gonna hop over to you, Sammy. You mentioned something about having cousins that are
Mhm.
Filipino Puerto Ricans. And you talked, Ralphie, you talked about your mom, and Elizabeth, you talked about your family. Heidi, in a moment, I'll ask you your memories. But in Puerto Rico, I remember being there for the holidays. Y había las
Mhm.
trullas de casa, casa,
Mhm.
casa, casa. And my mother, I remember the first time I went to Puerto Rico, I was 5 years old. And my mother took me around Christmas time and she left me there. A couple of horrible things that are in my book, Patty Puerto Rican, will come out. But I softened it for children because I don't want to scare them that we were barbaric. But the way they used to give me to feed the chickens, the pigs for the holiday, and then you know what happens to them. So, Sammy, you grew up in the island. Tell me about your Filipino cousins. Were they growing up also in Puerto Rico, or were they in the Philippines or in mainland, as we
No,
call it?
my uncle was in the armed forces, and his wife, his ex-wife, was Filipino, and so then they had the children, and then they were based in Puerto Rico for a couple of years during their teenage years, and that's how I met them. And so yeah, but so just to emphasize that this is part, right, of our history too, de la diáspora. You know, that many of our families are blended families, you know, in terms of ethnicity. And so, you know, you can't, I feel like once you have a taste of Puerto Rican culture, ¿verdad?
Right.
Mami decía que tú eres lo que come, right? You are what you eat. And so inevitably, you know, the flair and the sabor and the music and the beat and the partying and the warmth and all of that, people gravitate to that. But I wanted to talk about Los Reyes for just a moment because we in my household, we dump Santa before we dump the Reyes because my son, one night, I was tucking him into bed. He was like 8, 9 years old, and he figured out that Santa wasn't for real. And but he asked me, and he says, "Tell me the truth, is Santa for real?" And I said, "No, papito." Oh my God. It was like, "Ah!" Pero crisis, a crisis, right? And he was bawling and he was pissed at me. He's like, "Why did you lie to me?" This and that. And so I'm like, "Oh my God, papito," to preserve the sense of wonder because, right? And all of that. And so then finally I
But we
got him
still
to
have the
calm.
Tres Reyes.
No, but so then finally I got him to calm down and he says, "Okay, okay, Santa's not for real, but please tell me that the Reyes are for real." I say, "Yes, papito, the Reyes are for real." The Reyes are for real. And my husband's looking at me like, "Pero por qué? Why did you tell him that?" And I'm like,
Well, you have to keep some sense of
"Well, they
everything.
were for real once upon a time, right?
Yes,
Yes,
they were.
exactly.
So
Yes.
come on, cut me some slack, you know?" So,
They were. And, Heidi, I see you laughing. You come from a diverse background. You have a father, you said was German,
mhm.
and your mother's Puerto Rican. So did you celebrate Three Reyes and then the German Oktoberfest too? So you
No,
party from October, even though Puerto Ricans are known to party from when? From November to
To
March. You must start in
January,
October
February.
because you have to cover all the German holidays too.
that's well, when I was young, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother on the German side. So I did not grow up with a lot of Puerto Rican customs and traditions, you know. So I know of it, but I didn't grow up that way, you know. So
So
no
you don't like
memories of
beer?
that to share. Huh?
So you don't like beer?
And you know, I'm a bad German. I don't like beer either, which is crazy. Yeah, I love Riesling though, you know. Germans make some good Riesling.
When we talk about our culture, it comes with us no matter where we go. Um, you know, Sometimes we are called others. I don't know if any of you ever experienced the word other, but I have. And the moment that I heard it here in Charlotte, I saw it on the report when they listed everybody, and the Hispanic population was growing. And I had been an other for many years, and I refused to be named another. So one time in an employment application, I was younger and not knowing. I saw, they said, the race. I said, I'm another. I'm a Martian. I put it down. I didn't get the job because anybody that has in los cojones to say Martian isn't going to get the job. But it was frustrating to me to be an other all my life. And when I came to Charlotte and I saw so many Latinos, I found some people were still identifying me as an other. Did you ever have that happen to you, Elizabeth, where you were considered an other?
No, but I did have the experience of being asked for a green card and having been, and I was looking for a job through a headhunter, and he said, where's your green card? And I said, haven't you looked at my resume and my background? And it clearly says that even though I've lived in Puerto Rico and I consider myself Puerto Rican, but I don't need a green card. And if you as a headhunter don't understand that Puerto Ricans are US citizens, I don't need you to represent me. So thank you.
Heidi, did you
And
ever have anybody calling you that you needed a green card, another, or no?
No, but it's not something that was verbalized, but something you feel, right? Something you feel, you're around a group of people and you don't feel right, and people are looking at you funny. On the German side, none of them were US citizens, like, and didn't speak that great English. And then also on the Puerto Rican side, right? So, I don't know. I think the sense of other is always there, but again, not verbalized, but you feel it.
You
well,
know,
I
you
felt
talk
it.
about feeling it. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. What were you going to say?
I felt it too at some point also many years ago in Charlotte, when everybody that would speak Spanish, they would consider them Mexican.
Hmm.
And how do you do huevo rancheros? And I'm looking at the
Huevo
person
rancheros.
and I'm looking at the person, Google it, because from my culture, I don't do huevo ranchero, so I can't share the recipe, you know? And I am from Puerto Rico and I do not do huevos rancheros. So it's that stigma, even to this day, some people are so ignorant that they think that you speak Spanish and it's all about Mexican. No.
You know, Sammy, I wanted to ask you about the burden. We all carry a burden on our shoulders. We have always trying to prove ourselves. More so, we talk about, Rafi, I know you're a man and you may not have the burden of some females, but there's a burden. We all have it. The other burden, the not knowing whether we're de aquí ni de allá. We always feel that in between phase. Did you feel that, Sammy? Because you're raised in Puerto Rico. Did you feel that at any
I
time?
I did feel that tug of war, right? And different planes, when I moved from Puerto Rico to New York City after graduating from La UPI, to pursue a career in communications, what really what really hurt, right, was that sense of nostalgia, the nostalgia, of not being fully home, no matter where you are. And so, that also physically, right? Not having access to the things that feel familiar to you, like the snow. Oh my God. Para mí eso fue like un choque.
Brutal,
Bien
como
brutal.
dicen.
And the layering of clothing and all of that, right? So there was like this physical burden too, right? And then mentally, it was when how I needed to navigate that otherness that you're talking about, in real time, so I could get a job. And in a very conscious way, it was like Heidi said, you feel it. No one said it, but you're like, espérate, this is different. This is not like Puerto Rico that I know how to navigate. You could deal with the machismo. The machismo here is very different. It's how I say, that I learned how to speak white male, to be able to finagle my way into senior executive roles, and also protect and be guarded and make sure that as a Latina, I wasn't labeled. I wasn't, yeah, as feisty or whatever you want to call it. It's like our friend Simi said recently, it's like, like I'm too much. Well, no, maybe it's that you're not enough,
You're
right?
not
Or
enough.
this space
Yes,
is not
yes.
enough to handle me, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to, learn the ropes basically, because it's one thing to feel different, it's another to realize how the world sees you, right? And perceives you and expects you to shrink when that's not how you roll, because you're
Yeah.
used to living in a place like in Puerto Rico donde todos éramos boricua, right? So to me it was like, wait, these dynamics are kind of weird. And so that only intensified my sense of nostalgia for Puerto Rico, and that's why I always have to go back porque me da así como los tecatos, like I'm like I
It
need
calls you
my
back.
I need my hit, right, of
You
my
need your
culture, my
fix.
people. And Heidi knows she's been to Puerto Rico with me, and when we go, Yeah, she fits right in. She,
Yeah.
I was
yeah,
like, I don't want
coffee.
to leave. I want
Yes, I
to live
know.
So
here.
So, but
that
I feel
yearning
right
that
at
calls us,
home.
but
Yeah,
that yearning calls us all back. I know that
yearning.
when I go
Mhm.
back to Puerto Rico, I go annually. I have to go to La Isla. I have to go. Now
Mhm.
I go more regularly because of family matters that we have to attend to. But I used to go to Luquillo Beach. And the
Mhm.
Oh,
reason why, when I was 5 years old, that was the first place my mother took me to the beach. I felt that I
Mhm.
needed to touch the water, the sand,
Mhm.
feel the sun. I had to go in. And when we went with a girl trip with Elizabeth and three others. We went to Puerto Rico, two others. We went to, I forget, there were four of us there. I'm me. Um, we had a good time, but we had to go to Luquillo. I made a thing. We have to go into Luquillo. But that's the reason why I had to feel the sun, the sand, because I felt whole. So Philly, tell me, how do you feel in Philadelphia is such a diverse place. You have the changing of the seasons. You were born and raised there. You come from a musical ancestry that's amazing. Met your dad. Shout out to him. I think he's amazing. I would love to have you and him both on the same call, but I don't think I could handle it because you guys have so much history. But
He would just take over. He's so charming. You
he
wouldn't
would
even need
take
that
over.
for
He would be in
him.
charge because that's what we
No
do. We
question.
respect our
No
elders, and
question.
neither
No
you nor
question.
I would ever talk again. That would
That's
be
right.
it.
That's
So
right.
tell me, Philly, so listening to everybody's talk, what can you bring to the table as far as this feeling of other belonging and not having to be? Because where you work,
Uh,
you deal with a lot of Latinos. You're up there doing advocacy. Unidos US, we're always there. How do you feel in every day, and how do you manage to come out with a smile every day?
it's really worked out. I guess it was meant to be, or the spirits, because it's been good that I've gone after Sammy a few times because she's kind of teed me up for what I was thinking about. Because as I was reflecting, Sammy, on what you were talking about, and Heidi and others, is that on one level, you can't get any more Philly than me. I was born and raised and went to school downtown. And I mean, just my parents were amongst one of the relatively small amount of Puerto Rican families that were sort of integrated into the city. They were city workers, and we had they had coworkers and friends that were fairly diverse for the time, even though I grew up in a very segregated Puerto Rican neighborhood. So I kind of had, we got around. My dad would go to South Philly to the Italian restaurants, the big mob area back in the days, because he just wanted us to like get out of the neighborhood and see the city and experience life. But I've always felt very strange to admit this publicly, but I never have really felt home unless I'm in Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
And it's bizarre because of like my Spanish is even that good, relatively
Yeah.
speaking. And I've never lived there. Again, a week here, a week there, my whole life. That's it. And I swear it's the only place I feel home. And it's almost odd to admit. And I know Puerto Ricans shake their heads when I say that because they all kind of, most of us feel that way. And
Mhm.
I remember being a teenager, and again, my mom, big family. One day they took me to a beach somewhere. I forget where on the island, but somewhere on the northern coast, I think it was. Anyway, I'm there with, 10 plus cousins. We're on the water, and I remember just crying because I said I was denied this. Colonialism denied this. I should have been hanging out with my cousins having a blast in this paradise my whole life as a kid. Instead, I was this awkward little nerdy Puerto Rican kid in the hood. And that's just one example of like feeling so connected to that island when I'm there physically, but then because of the colonial factors, having to leave because we can make more money here, because this is where our families are, because, yeah, good luck trying to find an affordable house in Puerto Rico now. So we have to colonialism, not something we study in like political science. It's like it's the centerpiece of our lives, and
Mhm.
having to balance all that. So on one level, it's been a blessing because we were able to. Many of us, the majority of us, are not on the island anymore. We're able to spread our flavor, our culture, our love for people. But going, I miss it, and I never really feel at home anywhere. And it's always impacted me. And again, it's sometimes it's when you would say things like that. I know I've had people going back to Neela's conversation, Pat. I've been on occasion. I've been invited to these right wing talk shows to argue about immigration, being the immigration guy and the other racist guy. And I've had this happen to me several times where the commentator goes, "So, Colazo, why do you care?" You speak English, you educated. We don't have a problem with like you're a citizen. Like, why are you worried about these other people? Like, why are you worried about it? And I said, because I know exactly how they feel.
Mm,
Because that's how Puerto Ricans have been treated a lot in our history, in a different context. But when I was growing up, talking about being the other, there was no one looked. When I was growing up in Philly in the 70s and 80s, I was a little kid. Nobody was looking more down upon than us. And they still call my neighborhood to this day in the media the Badlands because that's how our community was referred. And we used to push back on that. So, we have to, in that context, I think one of the reasons, Pat, that in all of you are not just respected in the Puerto Rican community, you're well respected, well, beyond the Latino community, but especially particularly the Latino community. I've seen it firsthand with Pat's leadership nationally. And I think it's because we don't lose that and we don't let that go. And we understand that leaders aren't measured by how you react when someone discriminates against you. It's how you support the most vulnerable. And right now, we're having to do a lot of that.
Yep. Thank you, Rafael. I know that it's difficult sometimes to have these conversations. I want to thank you for stepping up and not only during this conversation of in the round that we call it, ni de aquí, ni de allá, but also every day you're in the trenches. You're talking and fighting for the rights of those that are voiceless. So I want to take a moment and thank you for the work that you do. Not only being Puerto Rican, being a human, you take it to the next level of humanity. So thank you.
Well, that's very sweet of you to say. If I could just share this, is that one of the things that talk about the positive, I know you're going to transition into that, is that, and I shared this at our event
How do
last
you know I'm
week.
going to positive? I may
Yeah,
stay negative for a while.
yeah. Well, I know your spirit, Pat. You're positive. You're ray of sunshine. Is that one of the things, if you've seen it historically in the last 30, 40 years, I think especially, is that Puerto Ricans have been on the front lines, literally, of immigration advocacy. If you think about in Congress, who was the champion for immigrant rights for 30 years? A Puerto Rico Chicago, Luis Gutierrez. And again and again and again, who would immigrants right now see in our culture is the one that represents them the most? Benito, in terms of,
And now
his,
it's Jose Ortiz,
and now there you go. And this is
the
there's another
jockeys.
example, another example. But my point is that Rene from Calle 13 is another one you
Mm-hmm.
can think of, but we have used our privilege to have
mhm.
our fams back is what I'm trying to say. And that's a beautiful thing that we have to give ourselves credit for. And I think we also have to remind people of that.
I appreciate the conversations we're having. I want to, yes, I do stay positive. I have to stay positive because if I stay in the negative, it drives me
Mhm,
crazy. I don't want
mhm,
to feel sick. I want to stay happy. And I believe in self-care. So self-care keeps me positive. I also have good friends like Elizabeth that calls me out and says, "Hey, get out of that funk." But, and I go down to Florida and I visit her. Now I have three people I can visit. But Heidi, I want to go back to you for a moment before pop over to Elizabeth and then to Sammy. I want to ask you, why Ola Books? Why did you start? What did you see in the Caribbean that made you say, I need to start this organization, this company,
yeah,
because it's amazing. I found you through United Latinas, which is an organization for anybody that's listening that you should see, unitedlatinas.org. Amazing group of women that through one dream, two women got together, founders, I think, not long ago, and here they are. They have 8,000 members. I'm one of them, two members here, three, hopefully, four. We do allow men to join too, I think, as allies. But and Ralphie, I'll give you a good word and I'll let them honor you. But Heidi, why Ola Books? Tell me what was the conception behind Ola Books?
yeah. Before I answer that, I was just listening to Sammy and Rafael talk, and you know how I don't know, you know how you were like, that's where you feel home. And then Sammy, you were like, when me and you were there, I didn't know how to act, right? Because I just was like, oh my God, this place. You know how they like, biologically, right? They're talking about like on the cellular level when they talk about like trauma. Let's just say as an example, right? They talk about DNA, like what's in you, right? And then but when I heard the two of you talking right now, I was like, Yeah, it's like our generational strength that makes us kind of feel that way and the longing. We talk a lot about generational trauma, but this is generational strength, I think,
Ooh, woo.
right?
Love
That
it.
like
Yeah.
when you've never been there,
Mm.
but you are like, I'm Puerto Rican, you can't tell me nothing different, down to my bones. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
then if you've gone for the first time or for the 50th time, you're just, it's something like on a cellular level that you're like, oh my God, this is where I'm meant to be. So I just wanted to share that because that's what I thought when I heard Rafael and Sammy talking. I was like, that's what that is, you know? So
Before you go into your answer for the other thing, I just want to put it out there for all of you. When you hear Borinquen, the song, does it make you feel what just Heidi talked about down to your DNA? You feel that gravitational pull that's part of me. Mark Anthony, I know that he didn't sing the song the first time around, and Rafa could tell me that, but when he sings that song, it pulls me to my DNA. It makes
mhm,
me want to go to Puerto Rico. Do you all feel that,
Mhm.
yes.
Heidi?
Yep.
It ended every Puerto Rican wedding for 25 years.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, think about it.
yeah,
It's probably waned a little bit now, but I mean, that the only way Bad Bunny could have ended his residence at Apple Prime was Mark to do that with him. It
yeah.
had to happen, and Mark knew that had to happen. Benito knew it had to happen because that's the only way to do it. Because that
And
song
Ricky had to
spans.
be there. And
And
Ricky
Mhm.
Ricky
Martin
had
had
his
to be
piece, but I'm
there.
talking about on the
He's the only
Amazon
one
special.
that could have sang that song
That's
to
right,
take it to the next level,
and
the
that song,
crossover.
if you know, we don't have time for the use ecology of it, but that song spans 100, pretty much 100 years
Yep.
of Puerto Rican music and culture.
Hmm.
Wow. Mhm.
And and a New Rican's the one that sang it and took it to that level. So
Mhm.
Wow.
So Heidi, I'm
Wow.
sorry we stomped on your answer, but um,
No, no.
it's one of those things you brought it up. It's in our DNA. We're transformed when we hear a song, when we smell some food.
Yep.
I know that when I go to, okay, now when I go to 125th Street and First Avenue, I go to the Cuchi Frito place, which I think, Elizabeth, I didn't take you there, but that's the place I wanted to take you, but it was wintertime. When I used to get out of the after hours, we used to go to the Cuchi Frito place to eat. And it was greasy, and there were alcapurrias and
And amazing.
empanadas and codfish fritters and arroz con pollo, but we would eat up and then go home and die because you ate too much. But it's okay. You don't care because you're hungover back in the day. Not now, people. Everybody that's listening, not now, people. Um, but Heidi, how do you follow up with telling me a little bit? Why did you choose Ola Books? What's the DNA of that company? Why did you feel that yearning to say it's enough, basta? I'm going to start a company called Ola Books.
Yeah, I mean it was a bunch of things that led up to it, you know. It was data that I was reading. It was me being part of stories and not wanting to write my story, but to help others bring their stories to life. It was, Latino, I'm a Latina. It was Caribbean because Puerto Rico's in the Caribbean and um Lord, I know this is going to go live at some point. I love my South American friends. I love you all. But living in South Florida, you kind of look at the islands like, meh, you over there. And I was like, no, actually, no. So it was very intentional for Ola Books to censor Latino and Caribbean authors and to go beyond Spanish speaking islands. Um, because because the language you speak depends on who colonized you, right?
That's right.
So
That's
there
right.
are different languages that they speak in the Caribbean. So it was the Caribbean, kind of as a whole. But yeah, and it's to celebrate our stories and to bring our stories front and center and for our community first, and then hopefully it's a call in to others, that are curious, right? And
Yeah.
truly want to know more, right? So
Thank you for sharing that. Elizabeth, she brought up something that I wanted to ask you. You're in Miami Springs. You're right there. You're a community involved leader like the rest of us. You're involved in the Rotary. You're involved. You went to a fish fry last night. That's very Southern. Muchacha, comieron. What did you eat? What kind of fish?
Well, it's interesting because I've never participated in that type of event. But being in a community that has been it's going to be celebrating 100 years of being established. So basically, it was founded by Glenn Curtis, and he was related to pilot, inventions and pilot and airline. So this community was established by airline more related. So,
Where you live
and
in Miami Springs, are you talking about?
yes, living
Okay.
here in Miami Springs, that's the foundation of the community. So the fish fry was from a Lions Club, and the community has become more integrated and diverse because it was more, how would you say,
Caucasian?
exclusive, Caucasian.
Mhm.
Exactly. Thank you.
Snowbirds.
Exactly. But it has become more diverse. And right now, like the Miami Springs Women's Club, it's the first time the president is a Marielita Cubana who was brought up here in the United States in Miami, but she has taken over and she has brought the diversity, the flavor, and even now in the Rotary Club, my friend, she's the president, and she's also brought up with the Cuban background. So
And
then,
I just want to do a public service announcement. Got to put it out there. Her husband is the mayor of Miami Springs. So he's the
Mm.
mayor. She's an amazing
my
woman.
friend.
Elizabeth is in the Rotary Club. So you have a Cuban president, and Elizabeth is Puerto Rican. So we have diversity of Latino because a lot of people think Florida is all Cuban, and they forget that it's the South. It is the South. And all of you that live in Florida, you're part of the South. So when I heard fish fry, I said, how Southern can you get? All you need are collard greens.
I feel like Florida's the only state that the more north you go, the more south it gets. Does that make sense?
Jacksonville, right? Is that what you're talking about? Go
No,
north?
I'm talking about when you leave South Florida. Like you
Oh,
know, like the more north you drive, the more south it gets. So
it's true. What do you feel,
Yes.
Sammy? Do you feel that way too, that it's more Southern as you go north?
Yes, absolutely.
Until
Yes,
you
it
come to
really is.
Charlotte.
Yeah. Oh, then and
That's
South Carolina. I've been to South Carolina.
Charlotte is very
no me
northern.
gusta. I didn't know how I
No
feel
me
about
gusta,
South
no me
Carolina.
gusta. Like you could feel it. Like you could feel it. But here, don't get me wrong. I'm in Orlando. It tends to be a lot more quote unquote progressive,
No, there's a
but
lot
it's
of Puerto
still
Ricans in Orlando.
a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
Puerto Ricans in Orlando, but still not the majority, right? And
Mhm.
Latinos are still not the majority. We're like 40% of the Orange County population, but you feel it in business, right? And especially if you come, like I was in New York for 12 years. So if you come, it's like, oh, she's again too much, to this, to that. So I venture outside of, my business ecosystem for business because I'm not going to shrink. And so that's it. But yeah, and you feel the gatekeepers, you feel the old school, the powers that be mostly, I always say that Orlando is a puppet with white hands shoved up its ass, right? That basically moves everything,
Uh, I'm gonna
and
let this go.
well,
We are
I
going to
listen,
be
I wrote
raw.
that in the book. I wrote that in the book. The book is not for the faint of heart. I self-banned, so it's banned by the author because if you can't hack it, then don't read it. I don't care. But it's
And
my
that's why
truth.
Rafa, she gives a machete with her book. I
There
just
Yes,
you
want to
and
go.
it's
say that
my
a bookmark, it says a
There you
machete.
go. I like that.
so even in Orlando, but yes, absolutely. The further north and the further west, you go to Brevard County. Ooh, ooh, I don't want to get caught. at night, driving on a road with no lights on, right? Like you
Well,
see, yeah.
the reason I brought up Florida is because people assume that it's all Latinos. People
Bueno,
assume
casi.
that Philly,
One of every four
yeah,
people in the state
every
of
four.
Florida is Latino. The Puerto Rican community is about 100,000 people away from surpassing the Cuban community. And so in Florida, you're going to experience by 2028 the shift to a new global majority driven by the Latino population. Okay, and I know that Rafael with Unidos, you know all this data.
Yeah,
Whereas
yep.
in the US nationally, will experience that shift to a new global majority in 2045. It's happening in Florida in 2 years. Okay, and it's
Well,
driven by the Latino population.
the
Mm-hmm.
Latino population in Florida, I know that when I started working with the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, the reason why they chose me in Charlotte was because we blew up in 2000 and the 2000 census,
Mm-hmm.
600% in North Carolina, 300% in South Carolina. So the
Mm-hmm.
Latino population has been going up. We are the majority. But Rafa,
Yeah.
she brought you into the Rafael knows the numbers. Rafael, how difficult is it to have these conversations when you're doing your talk with other people? I know that you have your show. It's if you haven't seen his show, it's fantastic. I get a bleep every time I have it on the follow. So I don't know if you get notifications. Put the notifications on it. And then you listen because the conversations that he has are sometimes very lighthearted, but they get deep. And then sometimes they start deep and they get lighthearted. Or
Mm-hmm.
unexpected happens. There's conversations of stories of when they back in the day. But when you talk, Rafael, when you talk about I'm sorry I can't get away from this, the political climate of where we are today, does it matter that we are other, that we feel this yearning to go back to Puerto Rico, that the Jones Act is temporarily taken off, and most Puerto Ricans are shocked that the prices are going down? Is that a shocking factor to you personally as a human being, knowing what you know? Or is that just the way it is?
So, you could get a master's degree in studying that question, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
I
I ask
think
my question all the time.
I think the big picture here is that the country has done a very great disservice by educating all of us on the impact of the Latino community in this country, period.
Mm-hmm.
The irony that there would be a quote unquote controversy around Benito Ocasio in singing Spanish at an event in Santa Cruz, California. When the history of when literally a big chunk of our country used to be Mexico, literally, and Benito's family have been U.S. citizens for 4 or 5 generations. And I don't have to get into our impact in the military and everything we've contributed. We've given the country a real good deal with all of our talents and labor. And so just that's really how would you say, the challenge that we have, that there's this continual ignorance and willful ignorance of the contributions and how long we've been part of this whole situation. We've been part of it from the beginning. And, and getting into the Puerto Rican piece in Florida, that's not even really that new if you think about it. When we were little kids, the mayor man, he was Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Ferre, I mean, and there's been a Puerto Rican community in Miami forever. There's been a Puerto Rican community in Tampa forever. The Orlando piece, forget about it. So there's we're continuing have to remind people of all that we've done, and it's exhausting. And unfortunately, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans that don't know a lot of it either.
Mm-hmm.
So they get caught up into that, and they don't feel a sense of self because they weren't taught to be as proud as we are, because we were given that knowledge. And Heidi, what you're doing with your books,
Yeah.
and Sammy educating people, and I try to do, and Pat, what you do every day is, our humble contribution to it. Because I tell people, the more you learn, the more pissed off you're gonna get, because you're gonna realize what has been done to us. And I have to go back to it. It's not a political thing, just fact. We've been colonized over 500 years, and we still are Puerto Rican, and we ain't gonna let that go no time. And by the way, we're not gonna let it go. We're actually gonna make it the coolest thing in the world to be right now, which you could argue. I do want to go back to something that Heidi's brought up, if you don't mind, Pat, because I want to honor the piece that she's elevating here around her having that Caribbean focus. And you didn't say it, but I'm going to say it another way. One of the things, Heidi, that's really cool about you, which exemplifies, is that some of the most hardcore Puerto Ricans are the halfies, because y'all got to work extra hard to make sure everyone knows you represent. It is a beautiful thing because you bring your own flavor to it. In your case, being half German, and that's a wonderful thing. But the other piece, which is related to your Caribbean focus, is that, and it's a good thing, but it's also unfortunate, is too oftentimes Black Puerto Ricans have to be super Puerto Rican and speak the best Spanish so people acknowledge their Puerto Ricanness. And I think that's something, I'm sure that's on some level kind of part of the undertone of your focus, is to elevate our Blackness within our culture and to support our Caribbean brothers and sisters, most of which are Black, from the French Caribbean and the Dutch Caribbean and the English Caribbean, and who are our brothers, our Caribbean brothers and sisters. So I just want to honor you, Heidi, for that, because you didn't say it, but that's really, to be a Puerto Rican that's leading with being Caribbean is a very political statement, a very powerful statement about what your company's about. So I honor that. And the halfies are the coolest ones. I mean, let's keep it real. Bruno Mars, Heidi. I mean, y'all got the best of all the worlds. You know what I'm saying?
I love how
we
you said
have so many
halfies.
people to
Like,
thank, and
you
Heidi,
know how
I don't
Harry
know.
Potter got the muggles, right? And
Wait,
then
wait, wait, Heidi, don't go
wait,
there.
he called me halfies. I love it. And then I was watching this other
I knew you
show
were thinking
and they
about the
call them the
Muggles.
normies because they were half. I'm digging.
Well, let me
I
say
think
this: the star pitcher, well, one of the star pitchers for the Puerto Rico World Baseball Classic team is a guy named Seth Lugo, who's basically we would consider a white guy from Louisiana, but his grandfather on his dad's side, he's Lugo because he has one Puerto Rican grandparent who's the one that taught him baseball. He's a little kid, so he pitches for Puerto Rico. His nickname is Puerto Rican because he's 1/4 Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican?
Quarter, like a quarter.
Puerto Rican.
Like peseta.
Of course.
Because he's, instead
Peseta.
of Puerto Rican, he's a Puerto Rican because he's
Yeah.
1/4.
So Heidi's a 50 Rican.
There you go, 57, 50.
50 Cent. Oh my God, we have a Rican that's named 50 Cent. And you heard it here first. It's Heidi. I want to just bring it around to, I put in chat, everybody saw it here, but just for you that's listening to us, Rican Gambit is a video that they all saw ahead of time. And just want to say that if you haven't heard him, he brings the history to life. He talked about how they used to sterilize Puerto Rican women so that they wouldn't have to. You hear about these tugs and pulls with HR, what happens when you're pregnant and women have to have maternity leave. Now there's a policy in Congress that was passed about the pregnancy, but Puerto Ricans were sterilized in the garment district. My aunt was part of she used to own a garment company, and then she came to the United States in the 30s when the first boat lift 20s. She used to give me horror stories when she came in. She actually came in 1940, but she used to talk about horrors all the time. And one of the things, I didn't believe her until I saw it in this show about how Puerto Ricans were used as guinea pigs in many ways, with the military, with other things. Going back to what you were talking about, Rafael, and we take these for granted, but we have to move it forward. You said I stay positive. I have to stay positive because if not, what's the alternative? To be negative and to say I hate everything? We stay positive. We have people like Heidi, people like Sammy, people like Elizabeth doing their piece every day, and Rafi doing like what you do every day. And Elizabeth, I thank you for being part of the Rotary Club and being part of the community there, because it's not easy sometimes to pick up and go, but you're there. You're involved with the community. And Sammy, I love your book. It's Becoming La Jefa. In that book, she talks about different things that have happened to her as she was growing up in her space. We all have stories that we want to share. I want us to go around the room and end with this, or last few touches of thoughts here. Rafi, I know you had to step away. You'll be back shortly. But I want to start with you, Sammy, or maybe Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if you can. Give any parting words to take us a little bit forward. What's the next level? We have the next generation following us. I want to leave things on a higher note than when we started. We're others. Yes, we are, in betweens or whatever you want to call, but how can we tell the young folks that are listening to us today, what are you going to do to move it forward? What's your advice? Give me a nugget of
Change,
wisdom.
change is always present. We have to be resilient and always think that you can make the difference
Wow.
and
I
just
like that.
being who you are,
Thank you.
genuine, authentic, and bring the spark. That's who we are. And that's all I'm sharing.
My friend, you're very resilient. I know that you bring the spark. You bring a smile to my face every time I see you. Thank you so much for being here today. Sammy, I want to turn it over to you. What is something that you can leave with some nuggets of wisdom for the young folks that are listening to us?
I'm going to tell you that after I wrote my book, Becoming La Jefa, I had a big aha moment. And it was that by virtue of being Latinos and Puerto Rican, and women too, right? But really, being Puerto Rican and Latinos, we were born jefes and jefas because we have this no sé qué, okay, that we can make shit happen from nothing. We have resourcefulness, we have ingenuity, we have grit, we have ganas, we have all of it, everything. I mean, we can MacGyver our way through any kind of challenge like nobody's business. And right now they're eliminating DEI and all of that. I say bring it on. Let's go by merit because we are exceptional,
Hmm.
because we've been able to succeed and excel despite the lack of ease of access, despite the lack of resources, despite people trying to gatekeep, right, our brilliance, despite our not being able to get higher
Preach it,
education because
Sammy.
we're managing 2 3 jobs, okay, despite the attacks on our community, despite using us as guinea pigs, we're still here. And so I want to say to all Latinos and all Boricuas, I don't care si estás en la luna, okay? Get ready, baby, because the takeover is coming. The takeover is coming because Latinas are literally birthing the next generation of Americans. We are the matriarchs of a new America. Ja.
Wow. 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 All I could say is wow. Thank you. Wow. Reminds me of those days of, I'm not going to go there. Rafi, let's share some words of wisdom there. We're going to end with Heidi.
Absolutely. No, just what a pleasure it's been with y'all. I would just say to those watching this that the key that I found over the years is that I tell people God doesn't tease you with the dreams you have in your heart. They're there for a reason. So instead of stressing about hiding and avoiding the dream and making excuses why you don't go for it, understand you're not going to achieve it overnight. But it's incumbent upon you to listen to your heart and take a step. When I first started podcasting 13 years ago, I don't think I really knew anyone that even listened to them. I didn't meet another podcaster for 2 years. It took me 31 episodes to learn how to get it on iTunes. So the first 30 episodes, like, being a little kid in the neighborhood rapping. My first 30 are on SoundCloud because it's the only way I can figure out how to get audio on anything. And so, fast forward, and there's still days where I'm like, oh, I'm not famous yet. In my mind, I should be like Jimmy Fallon by now. But you know what? If you have no idea, if you follow your heart and share your talents and go for your dreams, you have no idea the impact you have on people. I wouldn't be here without having taken those steps and connected with Pat and all of you. And there's these moments where you will get validation that you're going on the right path. But it's not going to be obvious and big average billboards every day. So you got to have that faith that following your heart's going to be the right thing, and everyone will represent their own way. But you got to listen to your heart and go for it and take a step every day, understanding you're on the right path, even if it doesn't seem obvious or anyone's even verifying that. You have to have faith in following your heart.
Thank you so much for those words. Heidi, I'm going to ask you to give some words of wisdom for those that want to start their business, that see that they have a nook and a cranny. They want to etch out their piece of the pie. Coming from a bilingual background or bicultural background, I should really say. What are your some words of wisdom, some nuggets of learning that you can pass on?
Yeah, kind of even going off of what Rafael just shared. I know that they don't Oh, depending on what school you're in or what school you went to or the environment you're in, that you're not taught or shown how to build, right? You're not taught how to take what you love and take what you're good at and to make a business out of it, right? It seems like such just it's not even on your radar. I would encourage you to do just that. What are you good at? What are your natural gifts? What is something only that you can do? And like you like when you know, I would encourage you to say yes to you and take what you're good at and take what you love and to create a business. And Sammy, one time we were talking, and this was like in one of our many conversations, and it was like you were talking about the importance of like entrepreneurship, right? Because it's like I'm like paraphrasing, but it was like the only way like we're gonna make it, and to be able to have my favorite word from you, agency and ownership. And the only way to do that is if you kind of do your own thing, right? I wish I would have known this 20 years ago, but that would be what I would say to the young adults, to the new adults, and even if you're a little seasoned like me, um, that would be what I would say. Say yes to you.
I love that. Say yes to you. I want to thank you all for participating in the conversations in the round. Ni de aquí, ni de allá. It's a conversation that can take us into different avenues, as you saw. We went down certain rabbit holes, but we had to. We had to talk about the difficult questions, but I don't think we talked enough about it. But if you have any questions that you want to ask me to go to the panel, just let us know. Once again, I'm Pat Martinez. I'm your host of Conversations in the Round. I'm the CEO of Leadership in the Clouds, a management consulting firm located in Charlotte, North Carolina, with a global footprint. I want to say thank you for being there. And my tagline is always, we are many working as one.